The great doors of the council chamber opened slowly. Ambassador Alina Vasquez walked forward with her head held high. Behind her came 12 other humans, all dressed in simple dark uniforms. They carried no weapons. They brought no gifts. They came only with hope and 50 years of peaceful history among the stars. Station Apex was the center of galactic politics. It floated in neutral space, far from any single species' territory. For 10,000 years, the Galactic Council had met here to decide the fate of civilizations. 17 species held permanent seats. They controlled trade routes, set laws, and determined who mattered in the galaxy. Today, humanity asked to join them. Alina had prepared for this moment her entire life. She had studied every council species. She learned their languages, their customs, their histories. She knew the Velith valued patience. She knew that the Sari respected wealth. She knew the Morrowind prized ancient wisdom above all else. The chamber was enormous. 17 platforms rose in a circle around a central speaking floor. Each platform held representatives from a different species. Some were tall and thin. Others were short and wide. Some had scales. Others had fur or feathers or crystalline skin. They all looked down at the human delegation with expressions that ranged from curiosity to boredom to open contempt. The Archon of the Velith, Dominion, sat highest of all. His body was made of living crystal that shifted colors with his mood. He had held his seat for 3,000 years. To him, humanity was barely a footnote in galactic history. Alina stepped onto the central platform. A light shone down on her from above. She felt very small in this massive room, surrounded by beings who had conquered stars while humans still lived in caves. But she did not feel afraid. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began. Her voice was steady and clear. "Humanity comes before you today to request full membership in this body. For 50 years, we have traveled among the stars. We have established 300 colonies. We have traded peacefully with dozens of species. We have followed every law and honored every treaty." She paused and looked around the chamber. "We believe we have earned our place among you." Silence followed her words. Then the Archon raised one crystalline hand. The vote would begin. The Thessari representative spoke first. She was covered in golden scales that glittered in the chamber lights. "Humanity breeds too quickly," she said. Her voice was cold. "They multiply like insects. In 1,000 years, they would outnumber us all. We vote no." Alina felt her heart sink, but she kept her face calm. The Morrowind representative floated in a tank of purple liquid. He was ancient beyond measure, his tentacles scarred from centuries of life. "Humans live such short lives," he said slowly. "How can they develop proper wisdom? How can we trust the judgment of beings who die before they truly learn anything? We vote no." One by one, the council species cast their votes. The Cathari called humans galactic children playing with starships. The Vorn said humanity had nothing unique to offer. The Draxi worried that humans were too aggressive. The Peloth claimed human technology was too primitive. Each rejection hit Alina like a physical blow, but she stood straight and listened to every word. She noted every reason. She memorized every face. Only one species did not vote against humanity. The Durrani ambassador was an ancient being with 6 arms and eyes that seemed to look through time itself. When his turn came, he simply said, "We abstain." Then he watched Alina with an expression she could not read. The Archon's crystal body glowed, bright red as he delivered the final judgment. "The petition is denied," he announced. "Humanity may reapply in 100 standard years. Perhaps by then, you will have matured enough to deserve consideration." Some of the representatives laughed. Others simply looked away, already bored with the proceedings. Elena's delegation shifted behind her. She could feel their anger and humiliation. Some wanted to argue. Some wanted to plead. But Alina had prepared them for this possibility. She walked slowly to the Archon's platform and collected the formal rejection documents. Her hands did not shake. Her voice did not waver. Then she turned to face the full council one final time. "I thank the council for their time," she said. Each word was measured and calm. "We came here seeking friendship. We came hoping to join something greater than ourselves. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative in turn. We leave knowing exactly where we stand. She turned to her delegation and spoke clearly so the entire chamber could hear. Note their reasons. Note their faces. We will not forget this day. And Ambassador Alina Vasquez walked out of the council chamber. She did not look back. The council representatives watched her go with amusement. They expected humanity to spend the next century trying to prove themselves worthy. They expected desperate attempts to win favor. They expected humans to come crawling back, humble and grateful for any crumb of acceptance. They could not have been more wrong. What the council did not know was that humanity had planned for rejection. For years, human intelligence agents had mapped every weakness in council space. They had found the abandoned star systems that no one wanted. They had made contact with species the council had forgotten or ignored. They had studied trade routes and political alliances and ancient grudges. Alina had hoped for acceptance, but she had prepared for rejection as her shuttle left Station Apex. She activated a secure channel to Earth. Her message was short and simple. Sovereign Dawn is a go. Across 300 human colonies, people received the signal. Military officers opened sealed orders. Scientists activated secret research programs. Diplomats contacted allies who had been waiting in the shadows in a small office on Earth. An old general read Elena's message and smiled. He had been preparing for this moment for 20 years. He pressed a button and spoke into a communicator. Begin Phase 1. It's time to build something new. The Galactic Council believed they had put humanity in its place. They believed they had decades to deal with the human problem. They believed that without their approval, humanity could never become a true power in the galaxy. But humanity had a secret the Council did not understand. When humans were told they could not do something, they did not give up. They got angry. They got creative. They got determined. The Council had rejected humanity. So humanity would build an empire that the Council could never ignore, and they would start tonight. 5 years had passed since the rejection. Alina Vasquez now carried a new title. She was Secretary General of the Human Confederation. But she spent little time in offices or meeting rooms. Instead, she traveled to the darkest corners of the galaxy, visiting places the Council had abandoned long ago. The hollow worlds of the Scythics were dying when Alina first arrived. The Scythics were an insectoid species with 4 arms and compound eyes that saw in spectrums humans could not imagine. Once, they had been partners with the Thessari. They had shared technology and resources. They had believed in friendship between species. Then the Thessari found a better deal somewhere else. They left the Scythics without warning, taking all their shared technology with them. The atmospheric processors that kept the hollow worlds breathable began to fail. The Scythics sent messages to the Council, begging for help. The Council never replied. When Elena's ship landed on the primary hollow world, the Scythics expected another species coming to exploit them. Instead, Elena stepped off her ship with a team of engineers and a simple offer. "We know what it feels like to be rejected," she told the Scythics queen. "We know the pain of being told you do not matter. We are not here to make you our subjects. We are here to ask if you would like to be our friends." The queen studied Alina with her ancient compound eyes. She had seen many species come and go. She had learned not to trust promises. "What do you want in return?" the queen asked. Alina smiled. "Only your friendship. And maybe someday, your help if we need it." Human engineers worked alongside Scythics workers for months. They rebuilt atmospheric processors using a combination of human and Scythics technology. The result was better than either species could have created alone. The hollow worlds began to heal. Word spread quietly through the forgotten corners of the galaxy. Humanity was different. Humanity shared instead of hoarded. Humanity helped instead of exploited. Alina traveled next to the ocean world of Remnara. The Remnire were aquatic beings with long tentacles and bioluminescent skin that glowed in the deep waters. The Cathari had once mined their planet for rare minerals. They had drained entire oceans and poisoned the rest. When the resources ran out, they left the Remnari to die in their ruined world. Alina dove beneath the polluted waves in a special suit. She found the Remnar living in deep caves, the last clean water on their planet. Their leader was old and scarred, his glow fading from years of despair. "The surface dwellers come again," he said bitterly. "What more can you take from us? We have nothing left." Lena removed her helmet so he could see her face. "We came to give, not to take," she said. "Human scientists have developed water purification technology. It is yours if you want it. It's no cost, no conditions." The old Remnari stared at her for a long time. "Why would you help us? We cannot pay you. We have no resources. We have nothing to offer. You have yourselves," Alina replied. "Your knowledge of the oceans. Your understanding of biology. Your perspective on the universe. That is worth more than any mineral." Human ships arrived with purification equipment. Remnari scientists studied human technology and improved it in ways humans had never considered. Within 2 years, the oceans of Remnara began to recover. Within 5 years, the Remnari were developing new forms of medicine that could heal diseases humans had never been able to cure. The human Confederation grew slowly but steadily. Each new partner brought something unique. The Scythics contributed their neural weave computing technology, which merged with human quantum systems to create something revolutionary. The Remnari shared their biological knowledge, advancing human medicine by centuries. Other species brought their own gifts, their own perspectives, their own dreams. Alina called them the Forgotten Ones. Species the Council had used and discarded. Species deemed too weak, too poor, too strange to matter. Together, they formed something the galaxy had never seen before. The Council began to notice when 17 minor species signed the New Horizon Compact with humanity. This was a formal alliance, a declaration that these species would work together as equals. It was not the hierarchical system the Council used, where powerful species dominated weaker ones. It was something new. The Archon of the Velith dismissed it as meaningless. "Let the children play with their little club," he said. "It will collapse within a decade." But then the Durrani made their announcement. The Durrani were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They had been founding members of the Council 10,000 years ago. Their technology was advanced beyond anything other species could understand. They rarely spoke and never explained their actions. When the Durrani ambassador stood before the Council and announced that his species would not renew their Council membership, the chamber fell silent in shock. "Where will you go?" the Archon demanded. "What alliance could possibly match what the Council offers?" The Durrani ambassador turned his ancient eyes toward the viewing screens, where human ships could be seen traveling through distant star systems. "We have watched the young ones," he said slowly. "They build bridges while you build walls. They share while you hoard. They forgive while you punish." He paused. "We have decided to request partnership with the Human Confederation." The Council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions and accusations. The Archon's crystal body flashed through colors no one had ever seen before. But the Durrani ambassador simply walked out, just as Alina had done 5 years earlier. On Earth, Alina received the news with quiet satisfaction. Having the Durrani as partners would change everything. Their knowledge, their technology, their reputation would give the Confederation legitimacy that could not be denied. But more than that, she felt hope. The Durrani had seen something in humanity worth joining. They had recognized what the Council could not see. Humanity was not trying to replace the Council. They were not seeking revenge or dominance. They were building something better. A community where every species mattered. A future where cooperation replaced competition. Alina looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, more forgotten species were waiting to be found. More bridges were waiting to be built, and humanity was just getting started. The Archon called an emergency council session that night. For the first time in 3,000 years, he felt something cold growing in his crystalline heart. Fear. The Council responded to humanity's growing alliance in the only way they knew. They used their power to punish. The Archon stood before the Council and proposed sanctions against any species that traded with humanity. The vote was quick and decisive. Any ship carrying human goods would be turned away from Council ports. Any species doing business with the Confederation would lose access to the Jumpgate network that connected Council space. The Thazari representative smiled as the sanctions were announced. "Without our trade routes, the human alliance will starve within a decade," she said confidently. "They will come begging for forgiveness." The sanctions hit hard at first. The Jumpgates were ancient technology that the Velith had controlled for millennia. These massive structures allowed ships to travel across the galaxy in moments. Without access to the gates, travel between distant systems would take years instead of hours. Human merchants watched their businesses struggle. Confederation partners worried about their futures. Some species began to whisper about leaving the Alliance and returning to Council protection. Then Marcus Webb changed everything. Marcus was a chief engineer from a small human colony. He had wild gray hair and oil-stained hands and ideas that other scientists called impossible. 20 years earlier, he had presented a theory about faster-than-light travel at a Council science symposium. The Velith scientists had laughed at him. They called his math primitive. They said a species as young as humanity could never understand the true nature of space. Marcus had gone home humiliated. But he had not stopped working in a secret laboratory hidden in the asteroid belt of an unnamed system. Marcus and his team had spent 2 decades perfecting what they called the Horizon Drive. It worked on principles completely different from the jump gates. Instead of punching holes between fixed points in space, the Horizon Drive allowed ships to travel through the spaces between mapped routes, the cosmic wilderness that the Council had always avoided. When the sanctions began to strangle Confederation trade, Marcus sent a message to Secretary General Elena. "We are ready," he wrote. "It is time." The first Horizon Drive test was conducted in complete secrecy. A small human freighter activated its new engine and disappeared from normal space. For 3 terrifying hours. No one knew if the ship had been destroyed or lost forever. Then the freighter reappeared on the other side of the galaxy. In a system that should have taken 2 years to reach by normal travel, the crew was shaken, but alive. The cargo was intact. Marcus Webb had just made the Council's Jumpgate monopoly worthless. Within a year, Confederation ships were traveling routes no one had ever used before. They discovered new star systems. They found resources in places the Council had never explored. They established trade posts in the vast empty spaces. Between known territories, the Velith watched in growing horror as their ancient advantage disappeared. For thousands of years, controlling the jump gates had given them power over all galactic trade. Anyone who wanted to move goods or people across the galaxy had to pay Velith fees and follow Velith rules. Now ships were simply going around them. The Confederation opened its new trade routes to everyone. Any merchant could use the Horizon corridors without fees or restrictions. Any species could visit Confederation ports without the crushing tariffs that Council stations charged. Young species that had just discovered space travel found human ambassadors waiting for them. But these ambassadors did not come with demands or contracts. They came with gifts. Star charts showing safe routes through nearby space. Translation devices that would let them communicate with other species. Invitations to join a community that would help them grow. "We remember what it felt like to be new," the ambassadors would say. "We remember being laughed at and rejected. We want to give you the welcome we never received." Word spread across the galaxy. The Council charged high prices and demanded loyalty. The Confederation offered fair deals and asked only for friendship. The choice was easy for many. The Morwen had called humanity's short lifespan a weakness. They said humans could never develop wisdom because they died too quickly. But now the Council saw the truth that humans had always known. Short lives meant fast generations. Each generation of humans could question old ideas and try new approaches. While Council species spent centuries debating whether to change an ancient law, humans had already tried 10 different solutions and picked the best one: technology. That took the Morwen 1,000 years to develop. Humans created in decades. Innovations that the Velith had hoarded for millennia. Humans improved and shared freely. 15 years after the sanctions began, the Human Confederation controlled more trade than the 3 largest Council economies combined. Not because they had conquered anyone. Not because they had cheated or stolen. simply because they had offered something better. The Forgotten Ones thrived alongside humanity. The Scythics became masters of information technology, their neural weave networks connecting Confederation worlds in ways the Council could not match. The Remnari developed medicines that cured diseases across dozens of species. The Durrani shared ancient knowledge that accelerated human science by centuries. Each partner contributed something unique. Each partner received respect and support in return. It was not a hierarchy where the strong ruled the weak. It was a community where everyone lifted each other up. On Station Apex, the Council met more and more frequently. Emergency sessions became common. The Archon's crystal body had turned permanently dark, reflecting his constant anxiety. "We must do something," the Visari representative demanded. "Our merchants are losing everything. Our youth are emigrating to Confederation territories. They say opportunities are better there." The Archon had no answer. For 3,000 years, he had maintained power through control. Control of trade routes. Control of technology. Control of information. Humanity had built power through connection. Through sharing. Through trust. He did not know how to fight something he did not understand. In her office on Earth, Alina received weekly reports on Confederation growth. Each report brought news of new partners, new discoveries, new possibilities. She read them with quiet satisfaction. But she knew the real test was still coming. The Council would not accept their declining power forever. Eventually, they would have to face the truth. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was leading the way. 30 years had passed since the rejection. The galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The Thesari merchant guilds were drowning in debt. Their ships sat empty in ports because no one wanted to pay their high prices. Their warehouses were full of goods that no one would buy. Every month, more Thesari merchants quietly applied for Confederation trade licenses. Abandoning the Council system that had once made them rich, the Velith Dominion had lost 90% of its jump gate revenue. The ancient structures still worked, but fewer ships used them each year. Why pay Velith fees when Horizon corridors were free? The Archon had been forced to dismiss thousands of workers and close stations that had operated for millennia. The Cathari watched their client species disappear one by one. These were smaller civilizations that had depended on Cathari protection and trade. Now they were leaving to join the Confederation, where they were treated as partners instead of servants. Some Cathari politicians whispered that perhaps their species should leave to dot in desperation. The Council did something they had never done before. They requested a summit with the Human Confederation. The message arrived on the desk of Secretary General Yuki Tanaka. She was young by human standards, only 52 years old. But she led an alliance of 47 species and commanded more economic power than the entire Council combined. Elena Vasquez had chosen her as successor before retiring from public life. Why UK? I read the Council's request carefully. They wanted to meet on Station Apex. They wanted to discuss mutual cooperation and the future of galactic civilization. The language was formal and polite. But Yuki could see the desperation beneath the words. She smiled and began composing her response. The summit was held in the same council chamber where Elena had been rejected 3 decades earlier. But everything had changed. The council representatives no longer sat on raised platforms looking down. Instead, everyone sat at a circular table, eyes leveled with one another. The Archon's crystal body had faded to a dull gray. He looked old in a way that had nothing to do with years. His power and confidence had drained away with his species' wealth. Yuki Tanaka entered with a delegation that represented a dozen different species. Humans walked alongside Scythics and Remnari and Durrani. They wore simple clothing with no symbols of rank or authority. They looked like colleagues, not rulers and servants. The Archon stood to greet them. His voice was quiet and careful, nothing like the booming confidence he had shown when rejecting humanity. Secretary General Tanaka, he said, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. The Council has a proposal we believe will benefit everyone. Yuki nodded politely and took her seat. We are listening. The Thasari representative leaned forward eagerly. "We wish to invite humanity to join the Galactic Council," she announced. "Full membership, with all rights and privileges. We will even create a special position to honor your accomplishments." 30 years ago, these words would have meant everything to humanity. They would have celebrated for weeks. They would have felt validated and accepted. Now, Yuki simply shook her head. "We appreciate the offer," she said calmly, "but we must decline." Shock rippled through the council representatives. The Archon's crystal body flickered with confused colors. "Decline. But this is what your species wanted. This is what you came here asking for 3 decades ago." Yuki looked around the table at the representatives who had once laughed at humanity. 30 years ago, we wanted to join your council," she agreed. "We wanted to be accepted. We wanted to belong to something greater than ourselves." She paused. "But you taught us an important lesson that day. You taught us that we had to build our own path." She gestured to the diverse delegation behind her. "We did not come here today to join your council. We came to inform you that the Confederation is opening a permanent embassy on Station Apex, not as petitioners asking for acceptance. As equals offering partnership." The Morwen representative stirred in his tank of purple liquid. "You cannot simply ignore us," he said. "The Council has guided galactic civilization for 10,000 years. And in those 10,000 years, how many species did you reject?" Yuki asked. Her voice was not angry, just curious. "How many civilizations did you abandon when they were no longer useful? How many peoples did you exploit and discard?" The council representatives had no answer. The Archon spoke slowly, as if the words were being pulled from him against his will. "What do you want from us?" Yuki's expression softened slightly. "Nothing you have not already given us. Your rejection taught humanity that we could trust only ourselves and those you abandoned. We built something different. Something better." She looked at each council representative in turn. "Now we are offering you the same choice you once offered us. Join something greater than yourselves, or watch it flourish without you." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then the Thesari representative asked the question everyone was thinking. "If we wanted to join your confederation, what would we have to do?" "The same thing every partner does," Yuki replied. "Commit to cooperation instead of competition. Share your knowledge freely instead of hoarding it. Treat every species as equal, regardless of their age or power or wealth." She smiled slightly and apologized to everyone you have wronged. The Archon's crystal body shifted through colors no one could interpret. 3,000 years of pride and power warred with the reality of his situation. The council was dying. Every year, more species left. Every year, the Confederation grew stronger. "We will need time to discuss this among ourselves," he finally said, while UKI stood and gathered her delegation. "Take all the time you need. The Confederation will be here, building the future. You are welcome to join us whenever you are ready." She walked out of the council chamber, just as Elena had done 30 years before. But this time, no one was laughing. This time, the council representatives watched her go with something they had never felt toward humanity before: respect. Over the following months, something remarkable happened. Individual council species began applying for Confederation partnership. Not governments at first, but citizens. Merchants who wanted fair trade. Scientists who wanted to share discoveries. Young people who wanted opportunities their own civilizations could no longer provide. The applications came slowly at first, then faster and faster. The citizens of council species had seen how the forgotten ones thrived. They had heard stories of human fairness and Confederation opportunity. They wanted that future for themselves and their children. The council held vote after vote trying to stop the flow. But they could not force their own people to stay. The walls they had built to keep others out were now trapping them inside a dying system. On Earth, Yuki Tanaka watched the reports with quiet hope. The galaxy was not changing because humanity had forced it to change. It was changing because people everywhere were choosing something better. That was the victory Alina had always dreamed of. Not conquest. Not revenge. Just a future worth believing in, and it was finally arriving. 50 years had passed since. Ambassador Alina Vasquez walked out of the council chamber with rejection documents in her hands. Now she was returning to Station Apex one final time. Alina was 112 years old. Her hair was white, and her face was lined with age. Her eyes still held the same fire that had burned on that day of humiliation half a century ago. Medical technology had extended human lifespans, but she knew her remaining years were few. She wanted to see with her own eyes what humanity had helped create. The shuttle docked at Station Apex, and Alina stepped out into a world transformed beyond recognition. The station itself had grown to 5 times its original size. New sections had been added over the decades, built by dozens of different species working together. Human architecture blended with Sithic's crystalline structures and Remnary flowing water gardens in Durrani, living walls that pulsed with ancient energy. It was no longer the cold, political fortress she remembered. It had become a living monument to cooperation. Representatives from over 200 species filled the corridors. Alina saw beings she had never encountered before, species that had been discovered and welcomed in the years since her retirement. They walked and floated and crawled alongside each other, conducting business and sharing meals and arguing about ideas. The atmosphere was busy and sometimes chaotic, but it felt alive in ways the old council had never been. The Confederation of United Species, as it was now officially called, had no single leader. Instead, rotating councils handled different areas of governance. Any species could propose ideas. Any representative could speak. Decisions were made through discussion and compromise rather than power and intimidation. It was messy and slow sometimes. Humans and their partners had learned that democracy was harder than dictatorship. But it was also fair in ways the old council had never achieved. Alina made her way slowly through the station, greeting old friends and meeting new allies. The Sithic's queen who had first trusted humanity was gone now. But her daughter remembered Alina and embraced her with 4 arms. The Remnary leader who had doubted human intentions had been proven wrong, and his people now lived on healed oceans because of human help. Finally, Alina reached the council chamber. But it was no longer called that. Now, it was the assembly hall, and it had been completely rebuilt. Where 17 seats had once formed a circle meant to exclude. Hundreds of chairs now filled an enormous amphitheater designed to include. Representatives from every partner species had a place. New members were welcomed every year. The raised platforms were gone, replaced by a gentle slope where everyone could see and be seen as equals. Alina stood at the entrance and watched. The session in progress. A dozen species were debating a proposal to terraform a dying world in a distant system. Human scientists presented data alongside Durrani historians and Remnari biologists and Scythex engineers. They disagreed on methods and timelines, but they all agreed on the goal: save the world. Help the beings who lived there. Tears formed in Alina's old eyes. This was what she had dreamed of during those dark days after rejection. This was what humanity had fought to build. Not an empire where humans ruled others. A community where everyone mattered. A familiar presence approached her. Alina turned to find the Archon of the Velith Dominion standing nearby. His crystal body had regained some of its color over the years, though it would never shine as brightly as it once had. The Velith had been among the last council species to join the Confederation, pride making them resist until resistance was no longer possible. The Archon had changed in ways beyond appearance. His arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said quietly, "I was told you had arrived. I hoped we might speak." Alina nodded and walked with him to a quiet observation deck overlooking the assembly hall. For a long moment, they simply watched the debate below in silence. "You have remade the galaxy," the Archon finally said. His voice carried none of its former coldness. "I have lived 9,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed wars that destroyed entire civilizations, but I have never seen anything like what humanity has built." Alina leaned on the railing, feeling the weight of her years. "We did not build it alone," she replied. "Every species here contributed. Every partner brought something unique. Humanity was just the spark. The fire belongs to everyone, The Archon's crystal body shifted through soft colors. When you stood before the council 50 years ago, I saw a young species asking for scraps from our table. I thought you were beneath notice. I thought rejecting you was meaningless. He paused. I was wrong about everything. Lena smiled slightly. You were not wrong about everything. We were young. We were inexperienced. We did make mistakes in those early years. Many mistakes. But you learned from them, the Archon said. Your short lives, which we mocked as a weakness, let each generation start fresh. You were never trapped by ancient traditions or old grudges. You could change in ways my species cannot. He turned to face her directly. I must ask a question that has troubled me for decades. That day in the council chamber, when you received our rejection, you did not beg. You did not argue. You simply noted our reasons and left. How did you remain so calm? Alina was quiet for a long moment, remembering that painful day. Because I understood something that you did not, she finally said. Your rejection hurt. It hurt terribly. But it did not define us. You could deny us a seat at your table, but you could not deny us the right to build our own table. You could reject our friendship, but you could not reject our future. She looked out at the assembly hall, where the debate had ended, and representatives were greeting each other with warmth and respect. We came to your council, hoping to join something great. When you turned us away, we realized we had to become something great ourselves, and the only way to do that was to lift others up along with us. The Archon was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, the ancient crystalline being did something no Velith had ever done before, another species in recorded history. He bowed. Humanity was never galactic children, he admitted. We simply could not recognize what we had never seen before. A species young enough to still dream, and stubborn enough to make those dreams reality. Alina reached out and placed her weathered hand on the Archon's crystalline arm. The gesture was gentle, almost motherly. Then dream with us, she said. There is still so much left to build. The galaxy is vast, and we have barely begun to explore it. New species are waiting to be found. New wonders are waiting to be discovered. New problems are waiting to be solved. She smiled at him with warmth that held no grudge for the past. You spent millennia preserving what was. Join us in creating what could be. The Archon straightened and looked out at the assembly hall with new eyes. For the first time in 3,000 years, he allowed himself to imagine a future instead of protecting a past.
Yes,
He said softly. I think I would like that. Elena Vasquez died peacefully 3 years later, surrounded by friends from a dozen different species. Her body was buried on Earth, but memorials to her stood on hundreds of worlds across the Confederation. She had become a symbol not just for humanity, but for everyone who had ever been told they did not matter. The galaxy continued to change after her death. New species joined the Confederation. Old problems were solved. New challenges emerged. There were setbacks and failures alongside the victories. The future was never perfect, but it was built on something the old council had never understood. Not power or control or fear. Hope and trust, and the simple belief that when different peoples worked together, they could achieve more than any of them could alone. On Station Apex, a plaque was installed outside the assembly hall. It carried words that Alina had spoken on the day of humanity's rejection. Words that had become the foundation of everything that followed. We came here seeking friendship. We leave knowing exactly where we stand, and we will build something better. Humanity had kept that promise, and the galaxy was transformed because of it.